I want to get you back up to speed on how this story came to light. So we need to go back to August 16th of 2025 inside this home in Muscogee, Oklahoma, rural part of Oklahoma. We're talking about an hour's drive from Tulsa. According to KWTW, who spoke to the DA who prosecuted this case, an 11-year-old girl gave birth to a full-term baby.
We need to go back to August 16th of 2025 inside a home in Muscogee, Oklahoma, a rural part of the state about an hour's drive from Tulsa. According to the district attorney who prosecuted this case, an 11-year-old girl gave birth to a full-term baby inside that house. The charging document listed her age. The document listed the location. What the document could not capture was how a pregnancy reached full term without a single mandated reporter sounding the alarm. She had not seen a doctor in more than a year. She was not enrolled in any school. Picture a calendar on a kitchen wall. 12 months of pages torn away, each one representing a missed appointment that never happened, a visit that was never scheduled, a door that was never opened. The paperwork already knew.
To the girl's parents. So you have the girl's mom, Sher Walker, and then you have her stepdad, Dustin Walker. Now, initially, the Walkers acted reportedly shocked that the girl gave birth, and they claimed they had no idea.
The initial statement from the adults inside that house was one of collective shock. Sher Walker and Dustin Walker, the mother and the stepfather, told investigators they had no idea the 11-year-old was pregnant. None. That was the official word. That was the defense posture, but the district attorney described the girl as petite. A full-term pregnancy on a petite 11-year-old is not a subtle medical event.
That the 11-year-old girl was pregnant. Now, the DA told local media that story didn't hold up. She described the girl as petite, and you think of this girl giving birth to a full-term baby. It was obvious in the most horrific.
It was obvious in the most horrific of ways that this girl was pregnant, according to law enforcement. Obvious, that word matters. It moves this from a question of awareness to a question of acknowledgement. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you are subscribed to Crime Files 911, because we do not just cover the story, we follow the evidence.
And described are horrific. Neighbors claim that the house with all of those people did not have running water for as long as 3 years, leading up to the uncovering of this, frankly, house of horror. Now, here is how the investigation went down to our understanding. Police have this 11-year-old girl who was given birth.
The house itself was a separate indictment. Neighbors reported that 6 children lived there, along with multiple dogs and cats. The home had no running water. Not for a week, not for a month. For as long as 3 years leading up to the birth. 3 years without the ability to bathe a child, to wash a wound, to flush human waste. The neglect was not a secret buried in a back room. It was the front door. It was the yard. It was the pipes that led to nothing. You do not hide a house with no running water and 6 children and a full-term pregnancy. You choose not to see it.
In the home. Now, the baby was then tested for DNA, and that is when this sad and sick case took a major step forward, because that DNA showed, reportedly with 99% certainty, that Dustin Walker was the father. A charge of sexual abuse of a child.
Then came the DNA. The infant born inside that house was tested. The results returned with 99% certainty that Dustin Walker, the stepfather, a man in his mid-30s, was the biological father. The charge of sexual abuse of a child under the age of 12 was added to his case. That is not an allegation. That is a laboratory finding. That is a number on a report.
Walker, one from 2020, where he was charged with firing a gun inside his home. That case appears to have ended in a fine, but records show that case then was sent to collections.
Dustin Walker was not unknown to the system. Court records from Muscogee County show he was charged in 2020 with firing a gun inside his home. In 2023, he was charged with domestic assault and battery in the presence of a minor. That case was dismissed. The system had been to that door before.
Telling local media in Tulsa that there were 6 children who lived in the house, along with multiple dogs and cats, and the conditions.
Sher Walker was 33 years old at the time of her arrest, 6 children under her roof, one of them her own daughter, pregnant with her husband's child. She told authorities she did not know. That became the central question of her trial. Not what she did, but what she claimed she never saw.
Gosh, I think one thing that this case hinged on, Chris, is the duty that the law imposes upon people who are charged with caring for children. A parent, that child is your responsibility. Their safety is your responsibility. You have to have an awareness as to what's going on with that child. And heavens, if you see your own 11-year-old child visibly pregnant, which it sounds like was indisputable just in terms of an observation, you have to further
The law imposes a specific duty on parents. It is not a suggestion. Legal expert Eric Faddis broke down what the prosecution had to prove. A parent has the responsibility for that child's safety. You have to have awareness as to what is going on with that child. If you see your own 11-year-old child visibly pregnant, which sounds like was indisputable just in terms of observation, you have to further inquire. The jury found that Sher Walker violated that duty, and now she is facing up to life in prison.
As for Dustin's wife, Sherry, the jury just found her guilty on all the charges she faced. This is video of her entering the courtroom per KJRH television. According to court records, her trial lasted a week, and the docket shows several first responders testifying. Testimony ended on the 17th, and that same day, the jury returned a verdict. Jurors recommended that Sherry serve the rest of her life in prison on each of the 6 counts that she was found guilty of. A pre-sentencing investigation will be conducted, and she is...
The verdict landed fast. Dustin Walker had already entered a blind plea. He was sentenced to life in prison. Then came Sher Walker's turn. Her trial lasted 1 week. Testimony ended on the 17th. That same day, the jury returned a verdict on all charges. They recommended she serve the rest of her life in prison on each of the 6 counts. A pre-sentencing investigation will now be conducted. Her final sentence will be handed down at a later date. She was not the one who committed the assault, but the jury determined she was the one who let it happen. Nobody asked. Nobody answered. Nobody asked. Nobody answered.
It, gives you goosebumps in a lot of ways when you just think about how terrible it is that this is a girl who went through childbirth at 11 years old and was pregnant full term. So you're talking, roughly, I think like 35 to 40 weeks, pregnant, never saw a doctor. And I just think of like at that point, at any point in time, Sherry Walker, as the mom, could have gone forward to a doctor and brought...
Here is where the timeline becomes a forensic weapon. A full-term pregnancy lasts roughly 35 to 40 weeks. That is somewhere around 245 days. Every single one of those days, Sher Walker had the opportunity to put her daughter in a car and drive to a medical facility. Every single day, she had the authority and the physical capacity to walk into an emergency room and say something. The daughter is 11 years old. She does not have a car. She cannot drive herself. She needs help, and her care is entrusted to her mother.
How many instances were there where Sher Walker could have driven the kid to a medical facility, sought help? That kid, I'm sure, was terrified and helpless, and Sher Walker did nothing to help. And I think that was a tremendous problem for the defense.
The prosecutor's closing argument can be reconstructed from the verdict itself. That kid, I am sure, was terrified and helpless, and Sher Walker did nothing to help. That was a tremendous problem for the defense. Doing nothing, when you are the only adult who can act, becomes a form of participation. That is what the jury concluded.
This is the victim's grandmother, and this is the newborn's great-grandmother, biologically. And the name of that woman is Michelle Justice. So on the day this story came to light, you had a reporter with KJRH television, and she's investigating this case after the arrests were made.
But there was a third adult in that house, Sher Walker's mother, the victim's grandmother, the newborn's biological great-grandmother. Her name is Michelle Justice. She was there, and she spoke publicly on the day the story broke.
This was happening. None of us.
How do you think your granddaughter got pregnant?
She keeps telling us that it was the little child.
A local reporter approached her in the neighborhood. The exchange was recorded. We did not know this was happening. None of us? How do you think your granddaughter got pregnant? She keeps telling us that it was the little 12-year-old. That was Michelle Justice. Her mugshot tells the rest of the story.
What you just heard her say to that reporter was a complete lie. Justice was arrested and charged with 6 counts of child neglect. It is believed a total of 6 children lived in that house, including the 11-year-old who ended up giving birth. She reportedly also lived in the house where the child gave birth. In fact, she was accused of allegedly witnessing the birth. Michelle Justice is slated to go on trial July 23rd.
According to law enforcement, what she told that reporter was a complete lie. Justice was arrested and charged with 6 counts of child neglect. She lived in the house where the child gave birth. She is alleged to have witnessed the birth itself. Her trial is set. She faces the same prosecutorial machinery that has now secured 2 life sentences. The grandmother blamed a little 12-year-old. The lab blamed the 34-year-old stepfather. The gap between those two claims is where the evidence lies.
Look, the daughter is 11 years old. This daughter cannot, she doesn't have a car. She can't drive herself to the doctor's office. She needs help, and her care is entrusted to her parents, including her mother, Sher Walker. How many instances were there where Sher Walker could have driven the kid to a medical facility?
There is a question that sits underneath all of this, the kind of question that turns a local crime story into something far more unsettling. How many instances were there where Sher Walker could have driven the kid to a medical facility, sought help? At what point does a home stop being a private residence and become an active crime scene that the adults inside have chosen to maintain? At what point does silence become a sentence?
And not only do you have this 11-year-old who's a victim, but their siblings also victims. There are these 5 charges of neglect in the house. Dustin Walker was found guilty of those as well. It was alleged that this house that they were living in Muscogee, Oklahoma, did not have running water. And one question I keep coming back to when I cover this is like, certainly for a lot of us, it's something we take for granted. If you live in a city, plumbing, running water and all of that, it's just not the reality for every person based on where they live in the country and what their economic status may be. With that said, at what point does a home go from, hey, we have tough economic situation to this is a neglect case? I mean, obviously there was a lot going on inside that house, but for someone who used to work as a prosecutor as well, like what are you looking for in a house, in a neglect case to reach that bar where you can charge someone for it like we saw here?
You're looking at whether there is a basic level of habitability, including for the children. Can they bathe themselves? Can they feed themselves? Are they exposed to harm?
The 11-year-old was not the only victim. There were 6 children in that house. Dustin Walker was found guilty of 5 additional counts of neglect for those siblings. The newborn made 7 children, 3 adults. 0 interventions.
We're supposed to take care of them. And what happens to them now? Certainly they'll go into a kind of social services like system, usually supervised by the government. But how likely is it that someone is going to want to adopt not only 6 children, but now a 7th, when the 7th child is probably an infant or a toddler at this juncture? What's the likelihood that someone's going to take that on? Even the biggest heroes might not have the capability to do that. I fear these children are going to get separated, and God knows what could happen.
What happens to them now is a question the criminal justice system cannot fully answer. They will go into a social services system, usually supervised by the state. But how likely is it that someone will adopt not only 6 children but now a 7th? An infant whose first breath was taken inside a house with no running water. Even the biggest heroes might not have the capability to do that. These children will likely be separated. Their fates? Unknown. Nobody asked. Nobody answered.
Over what goes into that in trying to determine what her punishment should be?
Sure. So what the court is trying to figure out with the pre-sentence investigation in part is how culpable is this person? How morally blameworthy is Sher Walker in terms of what happened? She wasn't the one who got her daughter pregnant, obviously, but what actions or inactions are attributable to Sher Walker that gave rise to this. They're going to look at Sher Walker's past. They're going to look at her history. Had she suffered any trauma? Had she suffered any abuse? What are the issues with which she was contending? On top of that, they're going to look at her criminal history, whether there is any indication of any other kind of wrongdoing. And then they're going to look at the egregiousness of the offense. The impact on the victim is going to be huge. The victim.
The legal process now enters its final phase for Sher Walker. A pre-sentencing investigation will attempt to determine moral blameworthiness. The court will look at her past, any history of trauma or abuse she may have suffered, her criminal record, which before this case appeared clean. But they will also weigh the impact on the victim. The victim will likely be interviewed. And that statement, the words of an 11-year-old who gave birth inside a house she could not leave, will be given great weight by the judge. That is where the final decision will live.
What her sentence is going to be, Michelle Justice, she's innocent unless proven guilty, and then she will have her day in court as well, with the trial expected to start shortly. Just an awful story each time we talk about it. Criminal defense attorney Eric Faddis, always great to have you here on Law and Crime. Thanks for breaking this down for us.
Good to be with you.
Michelle Justice is presumed innocent unless proven guilty. Her trial is expected to start shortly. She will have her day in court. The third defendant. The third chance for a jury to look at what happened inside that house and decide who knew what and when they knew it. The calendar will be entered into evidence. The DNA report will be entered into evidence. The mugshot will be entered into evidence. The question remains whether anyone in that house will ever say out loud what the documents already prove. The paperwork already knew.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we are also streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart.
Go pull the criminal docket for Muscogee County, case number CF 2025-789, and read the charging affidavit for Michelle Justice. Then ask yourself in the comments below one question. How do you charge a grandmother with witnessing a birth she claims she never knew was happening? Like this video, share it, subscribe to Crime Files 911, and turn on notifications. We follow the evidence. We will be here when that verdict drops.